Anyway, thank you, Wendy and Karen, for this opportunity to share my story with your incredible group. This is my first interview ever, so thank you for your patience as I relate my reason for joining you today. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me. As Wendy has mentioned, I have written a book about my son's death and the incredible signs and the journey he has sent me on. This book is Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day, and it is close to final publication for anyone who may be interested. We're hoping it comes out sometime in August. Looking at this group, I see a few familiar faces and names. I have met some of you through various means, maybe an AREI conference. You may be clients of Suzanne Wilson, and I may have attended classes or workshops with you. So some of you do know me as the client services manager for Suzanne Wilson, the Carefree Medium. Now let me tell you my story and why I'm here and why I wrote a book. Beginning with several years ago, following a long career in government service and an early retirement, I found myself caring for my husband, Sal. Sal had entered the early stages of Lewy body dementia, a challenging and horrible condition which took him further away from our reality in this world, one day at a time, leading to his eventual passing over to the afterlife. His decline and eventual leaving this physical realm was a long process, nearly 5 years from diagnosis to his transition. It was not an easy time for any of us. Lewy body dementia is horrid. The body, the mind, the ability to communicate were all impacted. Sometimes he did not know me and would try to escape, head for home, or wherever his mind thought would be a safe place. It was heartbreaking, very heartbreaking, when he could not recognize me or would forget my name. We'd been together for well over 30 years. How could he forget me? I did everything in my power to care for Sal in our home until the end. It was one of the most challenging shared experiences in our lives, yet I was determined to do my best. What would you do for the best person in your life? But in the middle of caring for Sal, my only son, Matthew, was tragically killed in a hit-and-run accident. Matthew was my rock. It was Matthew who would visit every week as Sal declined. He was there to give me a little break, a listening ear, a chance to interact with normalcy. Sometimes a break so I could go to the grocery store, which I couldn't take Sal anymore. He would run away. But on the evening of January 28th, 2014, as I was preparing to settle down to an evening of watching a television program, a remarkable phenomena of sparkling lights appeared in front of me. 3 times, these lights glittered and faded. I had no idea what these were, hoping that I too was not experiencing hallucinations as my husband often did. There were no answers as to what they were or why they came up, so I tucked them into my memory to ponder at another time. The next morning on a quick drive, I was met by a flock of bluebirds, an unusual sight where I live. They flew alongside my car for a few minutes and then veered away. Thoughts of my son Matthew came to mind, his being a little kid, singing about Mr. Bluebird on his shoulder. Then the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow popped in my head, because we all know that's where the bluebirds fly, over that rainbow. A little later at home, the phone rang. My entire world crashed. A police detective contacted me, informing me that my son had died the night before. A hit and run as he was walking across a small residential street in his neighborhood, apparently taking his dog to the park for their nightly romp. Matthew's unexpected death shook up my life, crushed my heart, destroyed my dreams for his future. And yet, over time, his passing opened up a new world of possibilities, hope, and potentials. That night, after receiving the tragic news, calling relatives and friends and sitting in shock, I remembered those sparkling lights from the night before. I connected the dots and realized, incredibly, at the moment Matthew had transitioned, he had reached out to me. Those lights were Matthew's signs that he had passed over, that he was doing just fine. This realization carried me in the days moving forward. In time, I was led by more signs from Matthew to a beautiful journey of knowing love never dies. Sparkling lights, bluebirds, rainbows, and so many other signs that he was watching over me, supporting my quest to learn about spiritual matters, the survival of consciousness, the afterlife, and how to connect with him and others in spirit. Following his passing, I still faced 2 more years as my husband slowly succumbed to Lewy body dementia. Life was hard, emotionally and physically. But knowing my son Matthew was around in spirit kept me going. Towards his final days, my husband Sal often mentioned that he had had visits with Matthew. Matthew would come and tell him that he would be there to help him when he passes over, that he was learning how to help people cross over into the afterlife. When Matthew would share that with Sal, it would make him feel a little bit better. And when Sal would share with me, it just raised my spirits. Oh my gosh, my son is here to help his dad. How remarkable. Matthew, in time, led me to learn about the afterlife, to seek out teachers and mentors and books, to experience a remarkable reading with a medium, one that gave tremendous comfort and insight into my questions as to why he crossed over. What did he feel? Why was he in the road at that point in time? He was a grown man. He was always careful crossing the road, especially with the dogs. The medium told me that the angels were there and they had told him it was time to go to the other side. So he listened to the angels, ignoring any warning signs, and went with them to the other side. Not just the other side of the road, almost, but to the other side of the afterlife with the angels. This knowledge propelled me to learn even more. I took workshops, seminars, classes. I got guidance from several spiritual teachers and mentors. In time, I learned how to connect others with their own loved ones through mediumship. This happened because in early 2017, 3 years after Matthew had died, 1 year after Sal had died, I was beginning to find a new way forward in my life because Matthew brought an incredible connection for me. He led me to Suzanne Wilson, becoming her assistant and learning so much from her about connecting with spirit and more. That story is in the book. It's remarkable, but I never dreamed that I would be working for a medium, for meeting so many like you in this field on both sides of the veil. But here I am. Matthew continues to guide me. He has relayed through a number of mediums, fellow students, and the professionals that I needed to write down his story, to share this journey, to share with others who have been searching for answers. He's made sure the right people would step in to lead me to eventually making this story available for others. Matthew found a way to connect an editor to me, someone I had casually met at a conference. She called days after our meeting saying that Matthew had told her to call me and help me write his book. That started a collaboration as she was a very good editor and guided me on how to write this story. When we had a semi-final manuscript, I was led to consult with Joe Higgins. His expertise and guidance is bringing this story out for publication. Again, Matthew has had a hand in our collaboration. The title of this book, Living and Loving Life All Day, Every Day, was taken from something Matthew wrote down on the last day of his life. Earlier that morning, he had called me, asking for some advice. He was applying for a part-time job to be an assistant brewer at a small brew pub near his home. He asked what he should put down as his qualifications for the job. Of course, being mom, I said, well, I guess you love drinking beer. That would do. And we laughed. Weeks later, after he died, and life had settled a bit, I was going through his papers and found that application. He had not turned it in. On the section asking for his qualifications for this job, he had not followed the advice I had given him. Instead, he wrote his training for this job was living and loving life all day, every day. Well, that encapsulated Matthew's outlook on life, his personality, and became my motto moving forward. Thus, the perfect title to his book, his story, and my journey of hope, healing, and helping others. Matthew and I hope that others will read this book and find nuggets of hope, inspiration, understanding, peace, and maybe some healing for those of you who have been touched by the passing of their loved ones. So thank you for this opportunity to share our story. I hope you will be drawn from our tale to your heart to live and love life all day, every day. And that is my story.
Joe, over to you.
Hi. Hey, Wendy. Good to see you, Karen, and everyone else. Yeah, I've written a few books on signs over the last 15 years because I think it's really important that we connect with the general population that have these signs, and a lot of times they feel isolated. So I want to, write books about the signs so that people feel like they're not alone in some of these events. And when Diane contacted me, back I think it was February or something like that, and we talked, I just love the story. I just love the story. So I looked over the manuscript and read it, and it was, Diane, you have a wonderful way of writing. I think you're such a natural, just even the way you did the presentation today, it's got a nice flow to things. So it was very easy to fall into the book and really experience it coming from your words. And that to me is the classic sign of a good writer is, you kind of lose yourself in the voice. And then right after we started talking, I think you remember, I started getting signs from Matthew. I think I said to you, I said, now you watch, I'm going to start getting signs from Matthew. And then I started getting signs with him, like within a day or so. I was, I would turn my computer on or put on my music station, usually in the morning or something. I'm listening to some Native American music or some Zen music or something like that. And I'm organizing my desk, and Somewhere Over the Rainbow comes up. I'm like, what? I look over and I'm like, and all of a sudden I'm seeing bluebirds, and I'm seeing, I'm having my coffee out at a local plaza, and the car pulls right up in front of me and parks right across, and it's got a sticker on the back of it, Bluebird Taxi Service. I've never even heard of a taxi service called that. And so I'm taking pictures and I'm sending them to Diane and all these different things. Matthew comes through very easily. And I think when we had talked, Diane said that Matthew was really pushing her to complete this project. And I'm glad he did, because I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy the book, and they're going to get a lot of insight into her story, because, it's not only losing a child, but having to deal with her husband at the same time. That's really, really an emotional, difficult balance. I can't even imagine. But the fact that she put her faith in the signs that Matthew sent to her, it gave her that strength. And that's how powerful signs can be. It's wonderful that she picked it out right away, and Matthew realized she would, because there's a story in there that you had with Matthew when you guys happened to start talking about the afterlife. Remember that, Diane? And it was just, you guys hadn't really talked about it that much in depth, and you were kind of like surprised, hearing what was coming from him, and you guys were both basically on the same page, which was really good. So, when it was time for him to send a sign, he knew when to do it, that you would pick it up, and then that would begin your journey and his journey, because he's still with us, and he still pops in, and he's still sending me signs and sending Diane signs. And I would not be surprised if everyone in this room starts getting signs from Matthew, because that's the way Matthew is. So keep your eye out for bluebirds, rainbows, but it's a great story. I think we're going to learn to learn how to deal with death, and especially tragic death, sudden death, and the fact that these signs that we get can really open up our minds and our hearts and realize there's a bigger picture, and we can rely on that with strength, because it's a little bit easier for me because I've seen so many of the signs and talked to so many people, but there are so many people out there that have to go through this on their own, you know, or they're with family members that don't believe in any of this stuff, which is even like double worse because now they really have to stifle it. So it's important that these books come out. Um, and I'm so happy that Diane's decided to complete this book because she can't start a second one until she finishes the first. And I want to know the end of the story, and it's still ongoing, which is it's still being written because you haven't lived it yet. And that's like all of us, you know. The show must go on, the life goes on, and we continue to grow and experience things. And I can't imagine, you know, what Diane's going to experience and what she's going to teach. And because she's got a great worker on the other side, and it's going to be a fun journey to join with her. And her first book here is going to be the start of that. It's that first step, and it's just got it's a very warm book. Like I said, she's a great writer. It flows well, and you know, I hope everyone buys it. And like she said, well, it'll be out in a couple weeks. Her website will be up in a couple weeks too, and we will contact everyone. I think Wendy has the emails of people, and we'll let you know exactly, you know, what day it comes out, so that everyone has a chance and opportunity to grab it if they want. It'll be an ebook too and paperback, so you guys will have an opportunity. And you know, I look forward to seeing it in print. Like I said to Diane, I said, "How do you like writing a book? How many times did you read that chapter?" And she's like 12. I'm like, "Yeah, that's about right." You know. But that's all part of it. It's all part of it. So thanks, Diane, for bringing me aboard on this project. But I believe Matthew too has something in it, something to do with it. I don't believe in coincidences at all. Actually, you know, besides the signs that I got right off the bat after doing some consultations with Diane, yeah, he periodically comes in. I was asking him for, is there any particular type of color or graphics he'd like to use on the book cover, and so he's put insight into that. He leads me to certain things. I told Diane it was a great story. One night, this was like the fourth day of doing this. It was one night, like for 5 straight hours, I was looking for a bluebird on like a wreath. You know, I had something really in particular. I spent 5 hours going through graphic arts, Google, the whole 9 yards. You know. And I couldn't, they have all of them, and it's just like nothing what I was really looking for. So I finally at 10 o'clock, I said, you know, I'm going to wrap it up because you get, you know, go sleep on it the next morning, maybe, you know, it'll hit you or something. So I wrapped everything up, and I went into my bedroom, and I just checked Facebook for like a split minute just to see if anything was going on. And recently, a friend of mine had passed over from cancer, and one of his kids was on there thanking people for the service, for going to the service. And so I was looking at the comments because, you know, I know a lot of these people. And the third comment down was just a GIF, a GIF. It was just a picture of a bluebird on a wreath. And I'm like, I've been looking for 5 hours for that thing. And you know what I mean? It was just like, and I said, oh my God, thank you, Matthew. Like 4 or 5 comments after that was another bluebird on a wreath. And I'm like, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, the person that had passed away had nothing to do with bluebirds or anything. And I've been looking for the book cover for 5 hours before that. So that's just Matthew tapping in, but that really kind of got me because I was like, really? So Matthew couldn't have shown me that like 4.5 hours ago. So, you know, I was like, oh my God. So he's got a great sense of humor. So he does come through, and he came through a class that I have with some students I have that are developing their mediumship and stuff. And he came through one night, and since he was here, I decided to let the students try to see who it was and if they could pick up his energy and any information and stuff. So it was he was like a sitter, you know. I was like, oh, great, I can have a sitter. So, and because I had already known a lot about him from working with Diane. So they did very well. They picked up what he looked like. They picked up his personality. They picked up his strong head of hair. They picked up, you know, about the rainbows and the bike, riding the bike up with his friends and stuff like that. And there were a lot of stuff like that. So was great practice for them, but it was also showed me how strong Matthew can be and how spirit can be to also come to other people. You don't have to be a relative or a loved one. You don't even have to know this person. So they do have that ability, and sometimes they will do that to try to come through with a message for someone that can't accept it at that particular point because they might be under too much grief or they might be too frightened about the circumstances. So they'll come through a relative or a friend to let them know, to tell my mother-in-law, or tell mom, or tell your neighbor, that I'm okay, that I made it to the other side.
I hate to have you stopped,
That's okay.
because
Yeah.
actually, I was going to ask a question to Diane. I know that the loss of a child or other loved ones, and of course, you kind of had a double whammy over a short period of time, is what cracks a lot of people open to their own mediumship. And I wondered if you might tell us a little bit about how you came to recognize that not only were you connected to your son and your husband, but that you actually had the potential for mediumship, for connecting to other souls. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I'd be very happy to. Before Matthew had died, I had, some interest in afterlife spiritual matters, but not enough to really pursue. I didn't have any books on my shelf related to them. But upon his passing and the signs he showed me, I just knew he was fine. I knew there was an afterlife. I knew everything was good. And I wanted to know more. How could I, hear from him? That led me to reading a lot of books, many of them by mediums who are fairly well known, and eventually having a medium reading, and the information that came through was just amazing and so evidential that it inspired me to seek more. So I did. I had to wait a little bit because I was still dealing with my husband, but after he had passed 2 years after Matt, I had a lot of time on my hands, and I began to sign up for classes, and some of them were in person, some were online. I think what really sparked me, though, into trying to develop my own abilities was when I was offered the opportunity, because of Matthew's connecting, with Suzanne Wilson. Working with Suzanne, she offered me the chances to take her classes as her employee. And her classes included building up your intuition, building up some of your psychic abilities, and eventually leading into mediumship. I enjoyed all of that. I also took some classes with a couple of other mediums just to, bolster my own abilities, because Wilson always said, don't learn just from one medium, learn from several and take what you think works for you. But Wilson was the biggest influence. And in doing the classes and the development and the practices, I began to discover I could do this too. I had no clue before then that I had these abilities. I knew I had some intuition, but I never really pursued it. But bang, doing these, I began to make connections. Not always, but oftentimes I would do practice sittings and things would come in. I would do group, platform readings and things would come in. They just flood inside of me, and I relay what I'm feeling or seeing or hearing, and find that oftentimes people could relate to what I was getting. So this is how I learned that I could do it. I've heard many say, including Suzanne Wilson and others, that we're all have that potential to connect with spirit. But I think some people, it may be easier. Maybe they're born with that gift. It just comes easy. I don't feel I was born with the gift. I really have to work at it. When I'm practicing, I really have to focus to get in there. But when I do, sometimes things start flowing and it's just amazing. And I am so glad I learned how, because now I understand the clients that Suzanne has. I can explain to them a little bit about how it works. And I can see how Matthew is so able to easily flow from spirit through mediums to give messages, to connect, to send signs. It's just incredible.
Well, firstly, thank you both. It was really informative and lovely. I just wanted to talk about signs. Before Steve died, Steve's our son, and he died when he was 26. There were a number of signs. My mother-in-law had a dream with all these grey people, and one sort of standing out amongst them. My mum and dad were at the coast, and they looked out to sea. They saw a boat with fishermen in it, and they walked another 2 steps, and they looked back, and the boat was gone. My daughter had a dream. Yeah, then there were 2 or 3 other signs that he was going to pass, including, he said to me, "I've only got a very short life," showed me his hand, "I've only got a very short lifeline." And then after he died, there were 2 things. One was that we kept seeing a robin, and we saw the robin in Spain, where we've never seen a robin before. And the other one was that he used to bring us coins. And we were walking over Sydney Harbour Bridge, and my husband appeared to kick this coin, and it was his birthday. And when he picked up the coin, on the back of it, it said, "The year of the older person." And that was a really wonderful sign for us. Yeah. So thank you both, and keep up the good work.
If I could share a little bit on the signs. I had one this morning, which was really pretty interesting. Joe and I had a discussion a couple of weeks ago, and he had relayed, some of the things that he had felt with Matthew. And one of them was that Matthew would be using a bird to, connect with me. Now, Matthew's done that before, but he did it this morning in a very remarkable way. I was up very early. I'm sitting out in the front, watching the sun rise, having my coffee and writing in my journal. And I'm excited because I'm going to be doing this little show with you guys today. And I'm like in my head saying, "Oh, Matt, this is really exciting. Look at what you've gotten me into. This is so cool." And I could kind of feel some excitement. I felt like he was around me. Suddenly I hear a noise, and I look up, and just inches from my face is a hummingbird. And this hummingbird is just hovering in front of me, just flapping his little wings, looking at me. And so I felt this was one of those bird signs from Matthew. And I said, "Oh, hi, Matt. Are you as excited as I am?" And that bird hovered and looked at me, and then he buzzed off and went up to a tree, joining another hummingbird. So I think that was one of Matthew's ways of sending a sign saying, "Hey, I'm here. Hello. Take a look at me." Yes, he's excited. He's really gotten good at that. And it was really tickled me this morning that he had done that when I was thinking about this program and what he's gotten me into. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing too. That's really important because a lot of times these signs will come around a time when you need a sign, or it's easy to make that connection. Like Diane picked that up right away. It was like, oh, it's a perfect time because I'm all psyched up. I'm thinking about him, and there's the sign. So that's really, when you get a sign, think about the circumstances around it, and then it'll make you understand it a little bit
with
better.
the birds. A year ago, I had started writing the book. Thank goodness I had some guidance from somebody who knew what to do. And as I was writing the book, I thought of a photograph that I had that was important. And I opened up the laptop, and I'm looking for this photograph. I knew it was somewhere. As I'm doing that, I stumbled into a video file and tapped it, see what it was, and it was a little video of Sal towards the end. And I'm sitting there watching it. I was not ready for this, and I start getting, teary and emotional, thinking, "Oh my God, I'd kind of forgotten about this." Video ends. I hear a noise at the window in the living room where I'm sitting, like a tap, tap, tap. I look over at the window, and on one side where it's just glass is a hummingbird tapping on the window. On the side next to him where there's a screen is another hummingbird. He is clinging to the screen. His arms are out, his wings, his tail is down, his face is up. He looked like a cross. And I just knew that was Sal and Matt saying, "Hello, it's okay, Mom. It's okay." That made me cry more than the video, because they came at that moment that related to the video I was watching. It was just incredible to experience that. I hope some of you have had similar situations. I mean, it's just amazing when spirit connects like that.
It's great, and they came together. That's the thing. You got 2 of them.
Thank you both for coming on. I just want to ask you, Matthew seems to come through rather easily, and given the Earth plane density, that it can be challenging. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on how he's able to do it.
I think in Matthew's situation is one of the first signs he sent under a lot of stress, Diane, but she picked it up. And if you can get through that density, where someone can pick up a sign and accept it under those circumstances, was extreme trauma, and I don't even think the grief is kicked in yet at that point. It's just so. So he made it through on that way. So after that, everything was kind of like gravy, I would think. I think his personality, he's got an uplifting personality. He's down to earth guy. He's got a great sense of humor. His mom is open to it, and all those things play into it. So I think that's probably why he likes the limelight. So I think that plays into it too, and I think it's the energy in that particular situation. So both are receptive. A lot of times when they don't come through, there's other things going on that there's some reasons people don't get a sign and stuff. But in this situation, it just played off each other very well right from the get-go. And then so it carried on when Sal passed, and then, with the two birds. And I'm sure they'll get more creative because now once you accept these and you say, oh, thank you, they seem to come more often or at more times during during the years, or at certain particular times, I should say, once you acknowledge them. So Diane now acknowledged it right off the bat. So I think that helped out.
So only because Joe just mentioned something about there being a synchronicity or the circumstance being meaningful. I have to share with you guys something that happened this afternoon, like literally just a few hours ago. I had started teaching a little online Zoom class to a small group of people about EVPs and ITC. And within less than 2 minutes of starting it, we had a voice come through. And we all heard it in real time. But because I was speaking, nobody really knew exactly what it said, but I've already gotten the Zoom download, and it looks like it's saying yes. And we basically was just talking about the fact that we've been capturing voice through mechanical means for over 100 years now. And at that moment, we get a voice. And if the fact that it was about EVP and ITC just was too much of a coincidence. Yeah. It was kind of an exciting day.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Joe and Diane. I'd like to know how a discarnate body can influence a bird or anything to appear in that way.
They can do it in multiple different ways. Sometimes, like if you hear a song, if you're thinking about a loved one and their favorite song comes on, the circumstances can be in that situation that they will actually have you, how should I put it? A lot of times we think like, oh, the song just came on and they made the song come on. But what's happening is they're making you think about them, and that creates the connection. With animals, it's easy. The way they manipulate energy, it's pretty easy to get animals to kind of do certain things because everything's energy. So look, they can turn the lights on and off. They can deal with things like they can move things. So I think they can coordinate butterflies and dragonflies and things like that. Now, they just might bring your attention to these particular animals that are around the situation, and that's enough to make the connection. So let's say the hummingbirds just happen to be there, but
Yep.
Diane makes the connection because there's two of them, and once they're doing certain things, and it's right around the time that she's thinking about them because they put the thought into her head because they knew the hummingbirds were going to be there. So they can do it both ways.
Well, you were talking about signs. Well, ironically, I had a conversation with a dragonfly today. But the sign I wanted to bring up is last Sunday, Sally Stacy was on Global Gathering, and I actually resonate a lot of the things that happened to her happened to me. But I thought this was pretty cool. I woke up Monday morning and I had a notification that I had a voicemail, and it came in at 2:08 a.m. And I'm like, who would call me at 2:08 a.m.? So then I immediately thought of Sally's webinar, and then I went and I looked to my call log, and there was no phone, there was no call that registered coming in at that time. And when I played the voicemail, there was like nothing. It was just kind of silence for just a few seconds, and then it disconnected. But I knew in that moment when that came in, and then I saw that there was no registered call, and then I went and numerology, I looked up what 2:08 meant, and that definitely resonated with me. So I knew that was a sign from my angels that, I can do it. What happens to Sally can work with me too.
Yes, thank you, Karen. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Diane. I just, the theme of being open to a variety of ways to be contacted. So about 2 years ago, I was on a Deborah Martin Army for Love call, and my godmother had just passed. And while on the call with the group, and Deborah said, "Oh, does she like to dance? Because she's dancing." And I said, yes, she loved to dance. And at that moment, I got a phone call, one of those spammy kind of calls that said Marlboro on it. And my godmother was from Marlboro, and I hadn't even said that at all. Then I have another one that my husband's best friend passed away in the fall, and we used to call him Slice, as in slice of life. And it was the day of his funeral, and on the TV, when we got home, my husband was watching the news, and right on the TV, they were doing a story, and the caption underneath it said slice of life. And it was the only way, actually, that Slice could actually connect with my husband, because it was electronically. And then just recently, one more quickly, I was on a call with a group of people, and I was expressing how much I loved my parents. My father just passed in the fall, and I was saying that I forgive them, and I understand that they were limited, and I am very glad to be of service to my mother at that very instant, at the window in front of me. While I was on the Zoom call, a cardinal just bounced in between the house and the bush and made eye contact with me, and it was remarkable. And I thought that was my father. Thank you for listening to me. I enjoyed today. Thank you.
Hi. I actually want to relate to Diane. I'm in Joe's medium class, and Matthew came through so wonderful that day. He had me. I was folding clothes, and there was a green shirt. I was wearing a black shirt, and it was a green shirt, and I had heard a voice saying, "Put the green shirt on," and I'm like, "No, I'm gonna change my shirt." So by the time before class, he had me collecting colors of the rainbow. I had to get blue. I had to get red. I got a yellow pen. All this stuff. And I didn't know what was going on until I was in the class with Joe. And then Joe showed us the picture of the rainbow behind him. I mean, it was just so amazing. You could tell that he was such a friendly, nice person. Like it was and with a great sense of humor. Because I was going up and down those stairs like 5 times to get those things. And I just wanted to say that. And I lost my Joe?
I was just going to say that night he had us all wearing different shirts, and you refused to change your shirt, and that's why they had to get in the magic markers. And then the shirt that I
Oh.
finally, I was going to have my regular polo shirt on or something, and I finally pulled the short sleeve shirt out, and I'm like, oh, I guess I'll wear this. It's not something I usually wear, and I put it on, and the other guys in the class, they had switched shirts that they don't usually wear, and long story short, at the end, I showed them the picture of Matthew holding the rainbow, and the shirt that Matthew has on is the shirt that I'm wearing. That I was switched when I'm looking in my closet saying, what am I going to wear? I'm getting chills. It's the same shirt. It's bad.
And he had me change to a blue shirt.
Ben's
when
in the
Joe
class.
Yeah, I ended up with a blue shirt. I have no idea why. And then when Joe said,
That's amazing.
what kind of birds? I picked out some birds, and they were all bluebirds.
Now, there's something you guys don't know, Jen and Ben. When Jen had the green shirt and Ben had the blue shirt, there was a couple other things that came through. My screen had gone like a yellowish gold and a green and stuff. Well, I didn't find out till later that Diane said that Matthew's favorite team was Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish. And those were the colors he was bringing through for us to wear. So that's a great, it just hit me. It's kind of like, so he sent signs to all of us before we even knew that he was going to be there. He had set up this whole scenario, and so we went along with it, except for Jen refused to change her shirt, but she could do that because she's a woman. She's like, this is what I'm going to wear. So he had her pick out the rainbow. But it's interesting. So that's one example of how they can do this with multiple people at the same time. It can be done. So thanks, guys, for bringing that up, because that was a trip that night. That was a real trip.
May I add real quick on this? When Joe relayed to me what had happened in that class, and Matthew nudging everybody to these colors, the green, the gold, and the blue, and I had mentioned, well, those are the colors of Notre Dame. Earlier that day, I had been in his room cleaning it up. I had things still sitting there that were his, and I thought, it's time to put all of this away. And one of the things I put away was a Notre Dame tie with the Fighting Irish and all of those colors. I had put them in a drawer. So after Joe relayed to me what had happened at night at your class, I figured Matthew probably wants me to pull that back out and put it back where it was, because he's very proud of that tie in his room. So thank you. I wanted to share that.
Matthew's powerful. My grandson died most recently, and I haven't gotten signs from him yet, but I've gotten some incredible evidentiary readings that have been very comforting. My husband, I've gotten so many signs, I don't even know where to begin, but ones that stick out in my memory. I was in Cuba with a girlfriend. We were in Havana, and we were staying the first night of our trip there in not a hotel, but what's called a casa, which is owned by a local. And I was grieving. I kept saying to my husband, we should be on this trip together. This is terrible, and I didn't want my trip to be ruined. And the next morning, to start our first tour, I walked downstairs, and the cute little Cuban man who owned the place could speak no English. And he walks over to me, and gave me a coin, a very large coin, and he put it in my hand. And I thought, what is he doing? And it had a big star on one side. It was a Cuban coin. And I turned it over. This man doesn't know me. Was the year that we renewed our wedding vows. And I started crying, and he had to get an interpreter. Why was I upset? And I told him I was overjoyed. There were tears of joy. Another time, again, the animals, just another quick one. I was walking and I was grieving, and I told my husband, I need some support. This was after my grandson died, and I said, I need some support right now. I'm really hurting. Send me a sign. And a monarch butterfly flew into my face, and I was shocked, and I turned to watch it as it flew away, and I was engulfed in hundreds of dragonflies. I rarely see more than one or two, and I was in a swarm of hundreds, and I just stood there in the street, in the neighborhood, squealing in delight and joy, because it was such an obvious sign. I said, ask for a sign, and he gave me one right in my face.
Sure. Well, Gloria's was really wild. Mine is not
Yeah, it was
that big. I had, after my dad died, I asked for a specific sign, and I wanted a white feather, and I didn't get it for a long time. And one morning I got up and I said, you know what? I need to really start this day with intent. And I said, I'm open, I'm open, I'm open. And I went out a little bit later that day and white feather. And I know what was for my dad, and I said, thanks, and so I'm done. Thank you very much for letting me share that.
Thank you, Karen, and congratulations on the book, Diane. I can't wait to receive a copy. So this happened last Wednesday. I was taking a 3-day camping trip in my RV to Lake George here in Florida, and a friend had texted me, and I was just getting in the RV to leave, and I texted back on the road. I don't have Bluetooth in the RV, so back up a little bit. I used to have a dog 5 years ago. He passed away. Suzanne Wilson told me, this dog is not a dog. This is an interdimensional being, excuse me, that came to be with you. So I'm driving to my destination about 50 miles away. Another text comes in just as I'm passing through the edge of the town where my mother used to live. She passed away in 2015. So I didn't look at the text till I got to my destination. And the text was, on the road with Gary, Cole, and Wondrous Sights. Cole was the dog that passed 5 years ago. So I texted back and said, Cole passed away 5 years ago. And she wrote me back and said, Gary, I didn't send that. I was going to check in after work today. This dog used to love to go in the RV with me. And my mother, a very good communicator. So I checked in with Sally Stacy's team, Symphony, and they said, it was your family, meaning my mother. But my friend swears she did not send that text, knew that dog, but knew it had passed away. And she said, I wouldn't send that. So that's my story. That's my most recent.
That's very interesting. Times what I see is when people go on trips and they kind of feel sad because their loved one's not with them. Believe me, they're the first ones that pack. They really do. I mean, I've met strangers and stuff, and start reading them, and all of a sudden, I'll see maracas, I'll see a red dress, I'll see Spanish margaritas, and I'm like, all the stuff with Spain, and the guy will be like, I have a trip in 2 weeks to go to Spain. They know what you're doing, when you're going, before you haven't even consciously know what's going on. So they're one step ahead of you. So they've already put it this way, they've already checked in before you get to the hotel. So they're not missing anything. That's a great story though, Gary, with the dog, because we all can relate to our dogs. They're like, little angels. And for the fact that he was going to be with you, they're still around us too. Sometimes we can feel them on our beds, or that you can smell them, so.
I had 2 dogs, and one passed away, and Suzanne said, that was just a really nice dog. But this dog, which she explained how he passed from brain cancer, and she said, this dog is not a dog. And he loved to be in that RV with me. So he loved to go places. So I thought that was really
So he still is.
Yeah, he still does.
Yeah, so send him he's waiting for your new itinerary. So.
Yeah.
The lights on either side of the front door, they haven't worked for a long time. Your dad, he just can't fix them, even though, he was an electrician, he just couldn't do it anymore. After my dad passed away, those lights just started working again. The side lights on either side of the door. I've noticed other physical phenomena. I live in their house now. I one night was sitting at the kitchen table, and there's a sort of a sliding glass door that looks out on a deck. That light also has not worked. The light by the deck it didn't work when they were here. One night I was just sitting there writing at the kitchen table. That light came on.
Thanks, Karen. Joe, what do you say to people who say the signs are just coincidence? A lot of skeptics will say that people are making so much out of signs.
I kind of go back to my analytical mind. I mean, a one-off, people can say that, but when you start to have two or three, and some of these are complex, statistically, you're starting to really stretch that there isn't a connection, as opposed to it's just normal. Deborah's father's an electrician, and he couldn't fix the lights, and all the lights are coming on. It wasn't like all of a sudden tile work started coming up or something. It was something related to his job, and so we see those things, and from what I learned in my first book is they're going to pick out things that resonate with you. So if someone loves to collect baseball cards and stuff, they're not going to send you a sign about horse racing. Okay, so when people say, it's just a coincidence, it's not. It's going to look. It could look like one, but when you look at it more closely, it's going to be something that you're going to recognize about you, and if it's repeated, then statistically, it starts getting really, really hard to say it's not. It's not real. And then I tell them, go buy my book. Here, I'll give it. I give it to you. I carry one in my car. But a lot of times people like that. Some people can't accept it for multiple reasons. And I think when other people that are open-minded, if they do read these stories, like look at just today, the stories we heard today. Anyone listening to these stories would be like, blown away. At some point, like the expression says, if it quacks like a duck, it looks like a duck, and it walks like a duck. It's not an elephant. That's the way I put it. So, you kind of take away everything that it can't be, and what you're left with is most likely what's